National Marine Conservation Areas are established in accordance with the National Marine Conservation Areas Act for the purpose of protecting and conserving representative marine areas for the benefit, education, and enjoyment of the Canadian public and the world. The purpose of Parks Canada's system of National Marine Conservation Areas is to represent each of Canada's 29 natural marine regions. And as you can see from this map, each of the different marine regions is in a different stage of the establishment process. So the red dots you see on the map represent marine areas that are managed consistent with the National Marine Conservation Areas Act. The yellow dots represent National Marine Conservation Area proposals that are in the initial stages of development, and the orange areas represent National Marine Conservation Area proposals that are in the latter stages of development. Currently on the Pacific Coast, we are looking at establishing a National Marine Conservation Area in the southern Strait of Georgia, and of course up in Gwaii Haanas. There are two overarching goals of National Marine Conservation Areas. The first is to conserve biophysical diversity, and the second is to foster and encourage ecologically sustainable use. And it's these two goals that guide all of the work that Lindsay and I are going to talk about tonight.
All right, so in terms of mapping and modeling, one of the first questions anyone wants to know is why are we mapping and modeling? Why are we spending our time doing this? So on a general scale, we're doing this to ensure that decisions related to management and zoning are based on robust information. And then if we consider this on a timeline that Gwaii Haanas is working under, we start with pre-establishment, we move into establishment, and then we move into post-establishment. So if we consider Gwaii Haanas as these different phases. So in the first phase, wherein we're pre-establishment, we want to inform the development of the interim management plan. Once we've gone through establishment and we're in the post-establishment phase, one of the reasons we're trying to map and model would be to inform the development of a comprehensive zoning and management concept. The next question a number of people ask is how do we map and we model? So using the same timeline, so going from pre-establishment to post-establishment, in the pre-establishment phase, we would spend our time collecting and mapping data, so we're looking for the best available data sets. We try to identify areas of high conservation value, as well as identifying areas that are important to resource use and visitor experiences. In the later stages of pre-establishment, we start to identify priority areas for protection. Once we move into the post-establishment phase, we start to enhance those priority areas and attempt to develop a comprehensive zoning and management concept. Tonight, most of our focus will be on the pre-establishment phase, so we will walk you through the steps for collecting and mapping data, identifying areas of high conservation value, and identifying areas of importance to resource use and visitor experience. So first step would be to collect and map data. One of the first things we want to do is consider what is important in Gwaii Haanas. What areas are people interested in and why? So one of the ones that comes up right away are humpback whales. As we've seen tonight, there's a lot of interest in whales. So one of the examples of where you would find this would be Juan Perez Sound. Another area is intertidal habitats. One commonly recognized is in Burnaby Narrows. Other areas include Cape St. James, which has magnificent sunsets and interesting geological formations, as well as Skungwaii, which has a number of cultural treasures to the area. One of our first steps is to create a list of features that are important to represent a broad range of features and values within Gwaii Haanas. So this is an example of what we've used in the Queen Charlottes. In terms of large-scale natural marine region features, we're looking at about 109 different features ranging in the pelagic habitat, benthic habitat, and shore zone habitat. For biology, we have 43 different species and habitats ranging in fish, birds, mammals, and nearshore ecosystems. And in terms of distinctive features, we have 5 different distinctive features that have been identified. So I'm going to walk you through some of those maps. In terms of habitat maps, the examples I've shown here in the bottom left-hand corner are oceanographic regions. So that's looking at large-scale oceanographic processes and how they affect different areas. The second map is benthic habitats. So you're looking at a number of different depth classes, substrate types, and terrain features. So you've got different ridges and slopes and how those all interact together. And the third map is looking at biological wave exposure, so whether areas are protected or exposed to those waves. In terms of distinctive areas, 3 of the examples I've shown are looking at exposed and sheltered current areas. So you've got areas where they have high currents, which are exposed to the elements, whereas other areas which are not. The third map is showing areas of high rugosity, and you can see that there's a big distinction between the bumpiness of the areas within the eastern side of Gwaii Haanas and within the western side. For fish species and habitats, we ended up mapping 10 different species. The examples here are for herring, mottled rockfish habitat, and salmon. So we've got a number of different ways of mapping these. Some of them are modeled, some of them are just using salmon-bearing streams, and it's an identification of these points and how they work together. For bird species, we used a number of nest sites. The examples I've shown are black oyster catchers, ancient murrelets, and pelagic cormorants. For most of the nest sites, because the nest sites are located on land, we ended up taking an expert opinion and buffering the areas by sort of standard uses. So you're looking at what birds would actually use if they were nesting in a certain area. In terms of mammal species, we have a number of harbor seal haulouts. We have stellar sea lion wintering sites and haulouts. We have modeled data showing harbor porpoise distributions, killer whales, and Pacific white-sided dolphins. For nearshore ecosystems, we have about 18 different nearshore ecosystems we've used. Some of the examples I've shown here include kelp, estuaries, and barnacles. We've also used a number of surf grass, eelgrass, and a number of features such as those. We also ended up collecting cultural, economic, and social values. We did collect 16 different commercial fisheries data sets. The map I've shown shows you watchman sites and park warden sites. We also have a number of data sets on camping locations. And with all the mapping, we ended up producing an atlas. So this is the Gwaii Haanas Marine Atlas, which is available outside after if you'd like to have a look at it.